This is the Note Closer Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. My name is Scott Carson, and as always, I'm honored to be here this morning. You're going to love this episode. We are very, very excited to have our special guest on this morning. This special guest and I have been friends, and I consider her and her husband like family to me, and their dog, Freckles, like family as well. Can't leave Freckles out of there. I'm so excited to have my good friend Jayme Harrington join us from just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. You're in just south of Hickory or just north of Hickory, Jayme?
My office is actually in Hickory, and I live in Newton, which is about an hour west of Charlotte.
Right. And I guess one of the best known things about Hickory, North Carolina is that's where the hometown of Madison Bumgarner, the pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. If people did not know this.
That's right. And don't forget about Eric Church.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We got to remember Mr. Eric Church. That's right. So, Jayme, you and I have been friends. We've known each other, golly, over a decade now, I guess. Goes back a ways.
Yeah, more than that, since early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so, Jamie's been she's a CPA. I don't know if you're still doing accounting work, CPA for people.
Nope, I'm inactive as a CPA, doing primarily mortgage business now.
Yeah, and you've done that for a few years. You got started when you were 4, obviously, right?
Yes, I was a baby, a prodigy. Don't be giving away my age. Man.
I'm not doing that. That's why I say I started when you're 4. But you've been an active mortgage broker, and you were a CPA for 15 years. There in originally Taylorsville, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half outside on the north side of Charlotte. Smaller town, great town. Love the city, but you're doing business all over North Carolina and South Carolina as a mortgage banker these days. But you've also, you and Lanny have also been very, very active real estate business. That's actually how we met. I think you came to Austin to a workshop that one of my mentors, Leonetti and Jayme Kahla, were teaching. And I came out and spent a week with you doing some coaching and helping you find some deals and been rocking and rolling along ever since. There was some stuff. You guys definitely do a lot of fix and flips. Have done some fix and flips. You also own a mobile home park. Is that correct?
That's right. Trailer Park Queen. That's me.
I think didn't Sammy Kershaw have a song called the "She's the Queen of My Trailer"?
I think so. That would be me. It's been a great investment, though. I'm proud.
Yeah, definitely a cash king because we flipped a few of those things. But we've had some interesting, we've helped find some interesting deals for you on some stuff, and I thought we'd take a few times. It was great catching up with you this morning. I'm looking forward to coming out and seeing you in a couple months here in Charlotte when I'm out speaking.
I can't wait to see you. There's nothing like Scott Carson, big old bear hug. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, way too long, definitely. But you've always been a fan of the paper side of business, though, too, correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's my favorite investment. Favorite.
Why is that?
Well, it beats having to deal with tenants and collect rent and pay the property taxes and the homeowner's insurance, maintenance and upkeep. Oftentimes, it's a really good, quick movement of money, and it's also can be a really good long-term investment. I know it has been really good for us, and we've built good relationships with people with the paper industry. So I prefer it over owning the real estate. Now, Lanny, as you know, he likes to get his hands dirty and get in there and fix stuff and renovate. So he likes the real estate, but I like the fact that we can buy a note and just watch it make money.
Yeah, you can be a lien lord versus a landlord and watch that money come in every month versus having to go collect it, which is great stuff. So let's talk about one of your first note deals. It was on a condo. I think remember we were out there and we had a list of 70 some odd assets from a hedge fund, and you wanted to focus on something in your backyard. I was trying to get you to do something out of state, but I got to focus on my backyard. So we found one in Charlotte. If I remember the numbers on it correctly, it was the bank valued at about 40. They owed about 35 and some change on it. It was a condo. You thought it was in the hood, if I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know it was occupied or vacant. Huh?
You made me go look at it.
I actually, if I remember correctly, you sent Preston, your brother, out to go look at it first.
That's right. Yeah, I threw him under the bus. If he comes back alive, then I'll go.
Exactly. But we valued it about 50 based on comps. It was near school, not a bad looking little complex. And so you ended up paying $17,500 for it. When I told you to offer $4,000, when I told you to offer $4,000, you'd already made a bid at $17,500, but they accepted it. And it was still picking it up at 33%. Okay, so what happened with that deal?
Okay. So, yeah, that was our first paper project. We bought the condo for $17,500. I called the property owner to see if he wanted to start paying or what was his intent. A really sweet guy. He said, "Ma'am, I haven't lived in that place for over a year." He said, "You do whatever you want to with it." And I said, "Okay, I'll get a deed prepared. Will you meet me to sign the deed?" And he's like, "Sure. Well, just tell me what you want to do if people are going to stop calling me." So I said, "Okay, I will fix your problem." So we met him. He signed the deed for us. We took ownership of the property. Turned out to be a really good investment. I think we collected about $600 a month rent on it for several years. Just a one-bedroom condo. Didn't really need a lot of work. I think we spent a couple $1,000s getting it back in shape, just freshening it up a little bit. And the good part about that particular project, though, is as we had ownership, we attended a few of the HOA meetings and got to know other property owners there. You know, some were landlords, some were owner-occupants. It was a more of a low-income community, but it was a very well-maintained complex and some really great people there. So about a year later, an opportunity came up to purchase. I got a phone call from the property manager, and she said there's a nonprofit organization that owns 10 units here, and we don't know what's going on, but they have to divest immediately. And she said, "Are you interested?" So I said, "Well, yeah, sure. You know, what are they asking?" Well, eventually we came to $120,000 for 10 units in this complex. I put it under contract immediately, but I didn't have $120,000. So, but as you know, Scott, we don't worry about those little details. You get it under contract and start looking for the money. So I called a couple folks that knew what I did. They knew I bought some paper. They knew I invested. And I told them, "Hey, I got this opportunity. I already own a unit there, so I know how it performs. I know the complex. Are you interested?" So I got two guys. They each took 4 units each, and I kept 2, but I sold them the 8 for the 120. Mm-hmm. So I got 2 for free. We ponied up the money at the closing table. They took their 4 each. I took my 2, which now I had 3 in the complex. And we actually kept them. I can't remember exactly how long, but I think we were invested there about 4 or 5 years at least, and collected the rent on those 3 units. Small units, so very little upkeep. They performed pretty well. And then later, one of the guys that took the 4 units ended up coming back and offering to buy my 3 units. Mm-hmm. So I'm not invested there anymore, but I ended up selling him my 3, so he ended up with 7. And the other guy had the 4. I think they've since sold all of their investments there, but we ended up selling. I think I sold the 3 that I had. The property values had gone down during the recession, but they were still performing well. I think we sold all 3 for about $70.
Oh, that does not stink.
No. An $18,000 investment turned into several years of rental income, and then we cashed out of all of it for 65 or 70. So it's a pretty good deal. So I was hooked. From that point, I was hooked.
Yeah, exactly. One of the great things about buying in like a condo, and some people avoid condos, and I love condos. I think it's
I do too.
I think it's one of the best ways to buy one deal, but then have access to potentially other deals. Because we've bought notes on condos and then just went to the condo association or the HOA and said, hey, if anybody else is behind on their HOA dues, anybody else looking to sell, because they know what's going on. And it can often lead to 4 or 5, even 2 more deals a lot of times, maybe not immediately, but over the next few months if you play your cards right. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I like condos as well because you do get to know the people there. For a lot of reasons, they can, they help keep an eye on your property because they know you don't live there, but they do. They want to keep their neighborhood maintained. They keep you informed. They let you know what's going on. You get to meet other investors that may want to buy or sell. So I don't shy away from them at all, but definitely being connected with an HOA can also open up opportunities. I think Scott, that we bought a little mountain house. Mm-hmm. Now, this wasn't paper, but because of the same situation, being connected with the HOA, there was a lady in it's a gated mountain community, and she was years behind on her HOA dues. And finally, they decided to foreclose. We had told them if there's anything going on up here, you need an investor, let us know. We ended up buying this adorable little house in the mountains in a gated community, swimming pool, clubhouse, and everything. Older community, but just beautiful, peaceful, and quiet. We bought it for $45,000. We did have to do a lot of renovation, but it would easily bring $150,000 right now if we sold it. And that's just from being connected with an HOA. And the next one that comes along, we'll probably have first dibs on it as well.
Yeah, I remember up in that neck of the woods, and Lanny showed me the one that you guys had bought and flipped it up there, done a lot of work to it, and you were salivating because it was a big house. You're looking for a little bit less work that you could spend more time on, but that was a gorgeous house, and I remember all the photos and being up there, and then actually putting a video together for you guys, if I remember correctly, and then marketing it and rock and roll, and then the house was like a block down, if I remember correctly. Drove by it a couple times. Yeah. That's a great thing. Being connected. A lot of people don't like HOAs, and trust me, sometimes they're a pain in the rear when you're trying to foreclose on a property and then try to get them to work with you in some cases. But hey, you want to make friends with those people or start paying the HOA fees on time because if you're in a place that's got 10 units or 100 units, you want to make friends with those people. I've had a couple situations actually here in Austin where the HOA foreclosed on a couple ends, and then they just deeded the properties over to me because they couldn't do anything with them based on their instructions. And so we just started paying the HOA fees on time, and they were happy. So,
and when they see that you improve the property values, you're the first phone call they're going to make when things start to fall apart on someone else's property. So yeah, we've made connections with HOAs on multiple properties and have almost always led to another transaction.
One of the things I did a couple years ago, we'll be doing a little bit more of this year, is I actually bought a list of every HOA or condo association in all Florida, and it was a big list, about 14,000 names, because it was everybody on the boards and the attorneys. And we did an email campaign and also a phone campaign calling, and we ended up picking up a couple assets down in Homestead, Florida, where the HOA was willing to sign their lien over, and other people were willing to sell assets over. So it's kind of an interesting play that most people don't know about. So,
good idea.
Yeah. Now, you've also picked up another couple assets. There's one, you were looking for a Myrtle Beach condo, and I came across, I was calling banks, and I knew that you guys were looking for Myrtle Beach, and found this one right on the water, literally on the water. And so I don't remember what the numbers were, but I know that I flipped the note to you, wholesaled it to you for a quick 10 grand in profit on our side. What were the numbers on your side? And we go through it was an interesting story with the bar on this one, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, love that transaction. We ended up buying the paper for $70,000.
Right.
The unpaid balance at the time was about $140,000 plus another $21,000 of debt that he had done a modification, so it was rolled over to the back of the loan with no interest bearing on it. So really looking at $160,000 balance. He had paid close to $200 for it because it was a beachfront condo, but he bought it at the height of the market. Myrtle Beach property crashed. And at the time that we took it over, it probably would have appraised for about 120.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy had just lost his rear on it. And now they were getting ready to foreclose.
Mm-hmm.
So we paid $70 for it. One of the things I always like to do is I always want to talk to the property owner first, because I want to know what their intent. I want to know what their attitude is. I want to know if they're going to cooperate, or do I have a battle on my hands. If I do, I may not want to get involved, even if it is a good deal. But I called this guy, and basically I was calling to see if he wanted to sign the deed over, because I knew he was so top heavy on it, he'd never get out from under it. And I was shocked to find out that he had no intent of letting go of the property. He wanted to try to work with me and make the payments. The math worked. No matter how it turned out, one of the things I always look for is, how can I screw this up?
Mm-hmm.
And if my list of possible ways to screw it up is minimal, then I'm in. So he was a great guy, good to work with, and we decided to go ahead and purchase the note and give him a chance to rebuild his credit, make the payments, and eventually refinance it and pay us out. Now, that was in November of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So we paid $70 for it. We collected $1,100 roughly a month, principal and interest. And he just refinanced it 2 months ago and paid us off. So we recovered our investment and then some, just with the monthly installments. And then he was able to refinance because the property values went up. It appraised for enough to be able to do it. I did forgive the $20,000 that was moved to the rear of the loan with no interest bearing with modifications. I knew when we bought the paper, we'd never collect that. Even if we had to foreclose and sold it, it was never going to collect that money. So I didn't care about that anyway. So we forgave that, and he paid us off, and we came out pretty good on that one. So his payoff was over $100,000 on top of the years of payments that he'd been making to us.
That's a nice six-figure check to get before the holidays rolls in, huh?
Yeah, I can live with it. I can live with that. That'll buy some really cute boots.
Let's see here. We got some comments here. Laura says, "I love that approach. How could I screw this up? How could I mess this up?" And I remember us talking about this. Was an interesting deal because it came from a mortgage banker out of Dallas who sent me a couple deals. I ended up buying 3 deals from this. Is one of the 3 deals that we were in for a package deal on. But if I remember correctly, the mortgage banker who wrote this was getting phone calls from the borrowers on a monthly basis, and somehow the borrower had gotten his cell phone. And so I remember the guy's name, I think it was Jeremiah. And Jeremiah's like, I'm ready. I'm ready to be done with this borrower. I don't want him calling me anymore. We had to buy the note back because he went in default. And it was clogging up their books. Actually, it was a company called W.R. Stark. I don't think they're in business anymore. But it was clogging up their books. They had to get rid of it, and that's why they're willing to let it go for $60 to me, and I wholesaled it to you guys for $70. It was worth $110, and
we were glad to pay the fee.
Yeah,
glad to pay the fee. That was not a problem.
Right. What questions do you guys have for Jayme if you're watching on Facebook Live? Do we have any questions? I see we got good morning, Chris. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Cody. Good morning, Donovan, Lonovan. Got a bunch of people on here listening and watching. Good morning, Alex. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were you going to say, Jayme?
I think I was just going to say that the guy he was howling and harassing Jeremiah because he really didn't want to lose his property. He knew he'd lost a lot of money already. He wanted to hang on to it, and he had it in the rental pool there, with the complex. He was at that point collecting enough off of it to be able to make the payments. He just couldn't catch up his delinquencies. There just wasn't enough money there. So it was really a good situation for him. He actually turned out to be a good friend. Stay in touch with him, I'm sure, in the future. And he's actually recovered very well since the recession, does well for himself now, and he might be interested in buying paper. He asked me several times, how did you do do this? How did you get this note? Why did you do this? And of course, he doesn't know the numbers. Otherwise, I don't know, he may not be real happy with me if he knew the numbers. But anyway, we saved the property for him, and he's happy.
It was a win-win because you're willing to work with a guy. It made sense. And sometimes I think that's a lot of people fail to realize is really the most profitable aspect of this business is usually keeping them in the house. Giving them an opportunity to perform. Now, yes, about half the people will be deadbeats. They won't pull their head out of the sand or somewhere else. They've got their head shoved. But a lot of people are just good people. They've gone through a financial hiccup, and they just need a little bit of help to keep them in the property, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had some hard times when the recession hit. With me being in the mortgage industry, we held a lot of real estate at that time, if you remember. We had bought at the peak, which obviously wasn't the best time to buy. We couldn't see the future. And, there were folks that said, gosh, you shouldn't buy any more real estate. What are you thinking? And when my husband lost his job after 23 years, and we had to move his 401k into an IRA account, I decided then we're just going to put all our chips on the table. Yeah, we've lost money on some higher price homes that I look back and wish we hadn't gotten into the higher price homes. We lost money there. So I'm going to buy more real estate. And everybody's like, but that's how you lost money. Why would you buy more real estate? Well, it wasn't the real estate's fault. It was timing. Timing just wasn't on our side, but it still meant paper and real estate were still the best investments that we could have gotten into because we could buy them the cheapest that we've ever been able to buy. Mm-hmm. And the performance, we've got now the benefit of 8 years since we hit the hard times. We now have the performance history to know that when everybody else is walking away from it, that's when you take everything you got, put it on the table, make good decisions, and it has rewarded us well. Granted, it didn't happen overnight, but those were the best decisions that we made, was to get in when everybody else was getting out.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I remember you transitioning with some of your mortgage staff to start helping you processing short sales in the area, and you were using that. You've also incorporated giving what the market has given you. I know that Lanny was buying some mobile homes and flipping those, and you guys were doing some owner financing and some of that stuff. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, still have some of those. One of the guys some of our real estate that we had overpaid for prior to the recession, the guy, we just rented it, and he's lived there this whole time, and he ended up buying the house from us, I think in July of this year. So the return has been longer than what we would have liked, but yet it's also been bigger than what it would have been had we not just stayed the course and toughed it out and gotten through it.
Yeah, that's definitely. Now, you have expanded it a little bit. I want to ask you a question, because you being a mortgage banker, right,
mm-hmm.
With what you're doing there, are you ever reaching out to your the person in charge of your warehouse lines, the mothership, to see if they have any non-performing stuff?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm crouched waiting for them to send me one whenever it happens. They've got a really good performance record, but they do have had some buybacks. So I'm just waiting to see, when they come up. I'm first in line, so hopefully we'll be able to pick up something there from the company.
Right. Now, question for you: how long is the buyback period? Is it 6 months from the time of the origination? 12 months? What does it vary a little bit?
It varies. It depends on the reason. If it's just performance, it can go up to a year.
Sure.
If they fail to perform within the first year, then you can be forced to buy it back. If there's some errors in origination, processing, almost any reason now can be used to require a buyback. But the main reason is usually performance, because if it's performing, nobody's really digging into it.
Right.
But yeah, performance is still a big issue as far as a buyback. So
for a little education aspect of this, Jayme runs a mortgage company. She has used to be on your own, a mortgage broker, but you've got court. I remember you were getting courted left and right by companies because you do a great job there. But so she basically has a branch or several branches now as the growth, where they've got a specific amount of money they can lend on a monthly basis and do tabletop closings. And they underwrite the loans based on what the mothership or the parent company wants the loans right now, and then they buy them back. So basically, she works as a broker for the big company for the most part. And she structures the loans, the mortgages, exactly as we say the mothership wants them to. So as soon as she funds offer, let's say, I don't know what size of line you have, but say it's a $5 million line of credit. Funds on that, the mothership buys it back, that loan from her. You've all probably closed on a loan, and then a month later you got a notice that the loan has been sold to somebody else, or now you're going to make your payment somewhere else if you've ever bought a house. And what happens with a buyback, like Jayme was saying, is if the person goes in default within sometimes the first 6 months, the first year, Jayme's got to buy that loan back from the mothership onto her warehouse line. And you've got to buy it back at par, right, Jayme?
Mm-hmm.
Even though if they've gone default on their mortgage, it's the mortgage is not worth par. It's below that 5 or 10 percentage points, right?
That's correct.
And then you've got to work to try to either get them reperforming and then sell it off to somebody else so you can make your money without tying up your warehouse line, because you're making your money recycling the money on your warehouse line, charging points and yield spread, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that's one of the great things about if you're reaching out to mortgage companies. We've talked about this in one of our workshops before, one of our virtual note buying workshops. They're reaching out to mortgage bankers who have a warehouse line or are tracking down banks that provide warehouse lines. Reaching out to the business development guys are a good place because they'll know if Jayme or somebody else that works for the same company has stuff on their lines that's clogging it up because they want to get rid of it. So it's
always good to reach out to those folks, because when they have to buy something back, that doesn't make them happy, because they got to keep that money moving and making money. And when they have to buy something back, that's money that they can't use to fund other transactions. So that money freezes the flow. So they're anxious to get rid of. If it can't be resolved, then they have to get rid of it as soon as possible.
Yeah, and they're often willing to take a sizable discount to get it off their books because they can make up what they lose in the discount by recycling that money through and collecting points and fees over the next few months or the next year or so. That's how banks make money, recycling money. You have seen a lot of things happen in just your few years as a real estate investor. Wink, wink. Where do you see the market going if you had a crystal ball? What do you foresee with the market being? Because you're in North Carolina, great market, rebounded strong, relatively a faster foreclosure state for the most part. But do you think it's going to keep on going up, or do you think something's going to correct itself?
Well, it will always correct itself. You just don't know when. The thing that's going to postpone a correction, I think, particularly in our market, and I think it's the majority of North Carolina, is we have such an inventory shortage. There's not enough housing. Rental costs have really gone up, which is why it's also a good time to be a landlord, because you can get a lot more rent than what you could get back when we first started buying to hold. But because there's such an inventory shortage, a lot of the builders went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. They can't get the lines of credit from community banks now that they used to be able to get. In the rural areas where I am, we don't have the big name builders coming in and building big developments like we saw 10, 15 years ago. So I think the biggest need right now is going to be new construction. Although, people, we do have a lot of people moving in and out from out of state. So the out of state folks coming in is helping to keep our market boosted. We're beginning to see home prices go up. So my concern is not going to be, am I going to have enough transactions? I've got a file cabinet full of house shoppers right now. It's just somebody's got to start building. And that's going to be the only thing I'm seeing immediately that's holding back the market is just the inventory shortage is unbelievable.
Yeah, we see that in Austin as well here. And that's true. The home builders haven't gotten the financing from the banks like they did beforehand, where they were just giving away money. Now that the banks have been very hesitant to fund those projects, except if unless it's the owner is getting it financed under their own name and doing a one-off build. But that's not a way that a builder really makes a lot of money. They do it by throwing up 20, 40 homes at once and leveraging their labor costs to make things happen. So.
And the cost of construction has gone up, and they're not wanting to build the starter home to middle income home. If they're going to do spec homes, they want to build the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the market's just not there to support those yet. There's always a market for first-time home buyers, always. There's always people coming out of college, always couples getting married. There's always that market, but it's also the most underserved right now as far as new home construction.
Yeah, I totally agree to that 100% with what we see, because a lot of times they're outpricing new home buyers too with the spec homes and things like that. When you start seeing on the MLS and cities where it says the appraised value will not dictate final sales price is always a concern as well. Now, are you doing mortgages in just 2 states, or are you doing it in a variety of states?
I am personally licensed in North and South Carolina, but we can cover almost every state now. So I've got folks that we can connect with in the company that can cover almost any state. I'm probably going to expand my personal license to a couple more states. In my Charleston, South Carolina office, David is licensed in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Florida. So we've got Florida covered. In the Hendersonville office, we're going to be adding eventually Georgia and Tennessee. And then I may pick up Virginia, just so one of us will be able to cover it. But company-wide, I think we're in most every state now.
That's awesome. Now, having some licenses in like Georgia is a very advantageous thing for you because of the way that Georgia, the Attorney General in Georgia now has made it a requirement that if you're buying notes in Georgia, you have a mortgage broker's license.
Ah, I did not know that.
Yeah. And I know you like to drive down to Atlanta every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Going to Athens in January to see the river dancers. Lanny's been wanting to see the river dancers forever. I'm not sure why, but anyway, I got him tickets for Christmas, so we'll be in Georgia.
Oh, nice. Now, question, have you been to the lawnmower races lately?
Oh, God. No, but Lanny has. I went to one that did it. Craziest thing you've ever seen. Did you guys?
That's the time I went with you guys, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That was my first and last. But, hey, they go on all summer, so come back and see us. He can take you to a lawnmower race. I'll be shopping.
We got a question here. Robert asked, does the warehouse line come from the bank or the broker in Independent's pocket? Thanks. That comes from the bank, Robert, actually, from the parent bank that provides the line of credit. It's like giving you a credit card. Hey, go lend on my credit card. We'll pay the credit card off as long as you buy the things or fund the things that we like, for the most part. Best way to do that. Now, what is your goal? Let's get some goals for 2018 on some things.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I've always got some goals. I want to continue expansion. I love to get into some new markets as far as the mortgage business. But as far as the note business, I really want to put some more money into it. I think there's still a good opportunity to buy at good prices. Won't be as good as what you and I have experienced over the last few years, but there's still good money to be made in notes. We've been cashed out on several transactions, got some money sitting there I want to put back to work. So I'll be committing more time now that the money's come back to us. I'll definitely be committing more time to note buying. You know, that's my side business. It's not my primary. I look for, you know, not just things that I can't screw up, but I definitely want to look for notes that I can see and touch the collateral, which is why I like to stick to North and South Carolina. Like I said, I always like to talk to the property owner and just see what their attitude is, what their intent is. I don't want to get involved in transactions that are going to be tied up in divorce or bankruptcy. I don't have the time or interest to get caught up in drama. There's enough drama in what I do every day to add drama to my investment. But yeah, I like to get some more money back into notes this year and see what we can do with them.
Well, we'll be glad to keep an eye out for you. Definitely, it's good to.
I had a feeling you might be the person that would do that for me.
Glad to feed you guys, definitely, on that stuff. We'll get a question here from Michael Rogers. Michael says, can you repeat that comment about needing a mortgage license to buy a note in Georgia? I've not heard that. I just bought a performing loan in Georgia last month, and I do not have a mortgage license. So, yes, Michael, the Attorney General of the state of Georgia a few years ago was allowing people to buy mortgages or notes if you were doing less than 4 years. Well, last year, they tightened up the restriction and required if you bought a note, any type of note where you're creating, buying a note, you need to have a mortgage broker's license in the state of Georgia. It's not a new thing, but the Attorney General is going around and cracking down on people. And if you've bought one, hey, great, you may go under the radar. But what I'm saying is you may want to look at finding somebody who's got a mortgage banker's or mortgage broker's license to transfer that to just, one entity paying a percentage or something like that. That's what we've done in the past. Just so that the Attorney General doesn't kick you out of the state. Now, a few years ago, a very major California hedge fund, Condor, was buying notes in Georgia left and right and didn't get licensed in that state. And the Attorney General literally booted them out and forbid them from doing business. So they had to divest all of their assets in Georgia to other investors because otherwise they were looking at getting fined very heavily. So just because you haven't had the Attorney General reach out to you doesn't mean they will. And you may be able to fly under the radar, but you may want to look into it or reach out, drop me an email. We can to give you some discussion. Now, getting a mortgage bank or mortgage broker's license is not the most difficult thing out there, everybody. How difficult is it to get a mortgage broker's license these days, Jayme? Because you deal with loan officers in other states.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a lot harder than what it used to be. Mm-hmm. I think the problem that you're going to run into with getting a license is you have to be sponsored. And I'm not sure about Georgia. I would have a feeling that it's going to follow the rest of the states because with the NMLS, the federal regulation has some basics. Yep. And then each state pile on top of that whatever they want. But basically, to be licensed, you have to have an active license. You have to be sponsored by a primary company, a mortgage company, mortgage banker, broker, whatever it may be. You can't be a licensed individual loan officer without being under the umbrella of a company that's licensed. So that's pretty much eliminated the random brokers and LOs that used to be there. You have to have 40 hours of education, and you have to pass the exam and then continuing education each year for each state that you're licensed in. So they've kind of raised the bar to the point that part-timers are going to have a hard time being licensed in the industry at all.
Yeah, we've started to see more states start adding that license requirement. Washington State, Oregon, actually, Washington State's had it for a while. Oregon just passed a new law this year. I think we got Cody Cox watching here from Portland, one of our note family. But I don't see much stuff in Washington State. I don't see much stuff in up that neck of the woods. It's more so as I say, the Big Ten, Southeast. Man, you're just rolling in boxes this morning. I must have been a good elf this morning. Thank you. Got the office, the front desk are rolling in boxes like, hey, stuff's showing up the day after Christmas. So I guess I was a good little elf. But you were seeing that, going back to the point, we see more and more of that happening out there. I mean, North Carolina is not the easiest state to often foreclose on. You've dealt with that with short sales over the years, right, Jayme?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we worked on a lot of short sales, worked for a year, and then have the bank reject it and not take the offer the day before you're supposed to close. Short sales are really, really tough.
Mm-hmm. That's why I love the paper, because I could short paper all day long.
I agree.
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's good to catch up with you. We'll talk a little bit more here afterwards. But any other questions for Jayme before we let her get going on her merry day? Stephanie Goodman says, I've heard about those tractor races. She's looking forward to seeing one here in March when we come on out to Charlotte. We may have to make the trip up there and stay a little bit longer than a day. Go ahead, Jayme.
I just said we'd love it. We'd love for you to come out and spend more than a day.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll spend a couple days for sure, definitely. So, but I want to thank everybody that's listening. If you're listening on iTunes and Stitcher, make sure to leave a 5-star review and or share this with your friends and fellow investors out there if they enjoy learning about real estate and specifically the niche of note investing. You have. I want to definitely thank everybody. We just went over another milestone in downloads just recently. We look forward to the continuing growth of everybody out there. Thank you for everybody that's left a review. Thank you for listening. Thank you for those that listen here on Facebook Live. We had a guest yesterday with Case Studies on Pari, who, as of last night, had over 700 views on the Facebook Live video, which is phenomenal. We'll have several hundred with this one, I'm sure, because I love the case studies we discussed today, Jayme.
Me too. It's been a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. So, all right, everybody. Everybody go out, have a great day, and we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.